All right. Hello, everyone. Good morning. We're really excited to have you with us today. We're getting to some of the finer points, but in very important points in terms of how to set up your balancing act simulation for housing and some of the special features that might be useful for you moving forward, including how to use it in real-time synchronous settings and so forth. The plan for, well, first, just let me do some introductions. Just once again, we really want this to be an interactive learning group. So we wanted you to know who we are. This is the Balancing Act team. And then we'd also like to ask you all to introduce yourselves in chat if you would, and also put the jurisdictions that you're representing. The agenda for today is that we're going to spend a little bit of time up front. I think two of you have kind of volunteered or been voluntold or whatever that you would share a little bit about your thinking and how it's going for you to begin to use the software. So we'll have City of Concord and Cupertino. We'll just share a little bit about what they're doing. And then because so many of you have asked about this, about the geometries, Carrie Smith from ABAG is going to actually talk to you a little bit about how you get geometries from your current GIS software into a format that it can be used in Balancing Act. He's got a couple of different options for that. So we'll spend about 15 or 20 minutes on that towards the beginning of this session. And then we're going to continue to talk about features and how to make the simulation more usable. We're going to, Garrett is going to be sharing with you how to build this in a new language. That's both got a technological component to it in terms of the software and how things sort of adjust. But because I think most of us are probably fans of human translations and not machine translations, there's also just a little bit of human work involved in that. And we've got some tips and techniques that we think can help to make that as straightforward as possible, although just acknowledging it is a bit of a chore if we want to have high quality human translations in the simulation. Then I'm going to talk about something called meeting mode. Excuse me, meeting mode is the way to use the simulation in synchronous meetings, whether or not they're online or they're in person or they're hybrid. Very useful, and I think sort of in the tradition of a lot of planning type of meetings. I think it could be a really good facilitation tool. And then we're going to show you what the output looks like. I'm going to go to Elk Grove from last year, since they've actually completed their effort and done some really nice work, and just kind of show you what that looks like. And then we're going to talk about a feature called impacts, which is a way for you to assign a secondary impact to an action that a user takes on the simulation. And it's a very flexible tool, and we're not necessarily endorsing or recommending that you do any of it, but we just want to let you know that it's available. And then we'll talk about next steps, and just a little bit of a spoiler, even though between the ABAG crew and the Balancing Act crew, we've actually done the development necessary to have that HES connection with API, it's not quite ready. There's still a link that's not quite completed. We expect to have that by early next week. And so what we thought we would do is go ahead and just schedule another meeting for next Wednesday. Once again, hopefully people can make it. All of these will be recorded, and we'll actually walk you through a working version of that. So I think I've covered everything, and Garrett and Amy and Dan, if I've skipped something, let me know. And also just to remind you, for those of you who are just coming on, please, in your Zoom name, you can click on the three dots on the upper right-hand corner of your picture, and you can rename yourself. And if you wouldn't mind just putting your name and also the jurisdictions that you're representing. We have a lot of consultants that have been working on this and working with us, and some of you represent multiple places, and we're just trying to keep a little bit of it all straight. So, having said that, I just created one slide. It just occurred to us that we've been spending so much time working on the geometries, which is really the most complex part of these simulations. And it's also the newest part, so there's definitely some wrinkles to work out as we go. But just to remind you that before Lafayette, the two very successful versions of the simulation went out. Sutherlandshire, where they looked at types of housing that could be the mix that could be deployed in order to reach housing goals. And then also Elk Grove, the one that really I think might have been the most successful to date, or at least the ones that they actually used at the parcel level. They didn't use a map. They used static maps, but they didn't use the interactive map. Now, the interactive map can be used in actually any of those types of interactions. But just to remind you that there's at least a good case to be made that the progression and how you might use this is that you could use it in phases, and maybe starting with the housing type, if you want your residents to sort of get used to the idea that it's not going to be all single family homes, most likely, depending on the area, of course. And then looking at density, like what Lafayette did. And then maybe at the end, moving towards parcels. And so the parcel and the density, that's the one where the map is probably the most useful. But the housing type, the mix, is actually a really simple one to do. It can be created probably in just a few hours. And it might be something that you may want to consider. And if anybody needs that, I can do a refresher. Sutherlandshire, Australia. Well, we'll just send that link out to you and make it available to you. They're the ones that did that. So just to let you know that even though we've spent so much time on the geometries, there's actually an awful lot that you can do without even touching those geometries. So I wanted to invite a couple of people first. Concord, Ben from Concord, to just tell us a little bit about what you've been doing. Ben, are you there? Yes, there you are. And Ben, would you like to share your screen, or would you like me to pull up yours?
I can share my screen. It's no problem.
Okay, that would be great.
As long as it works. Hold on one sec.
Maybe just introduce yourself. I don't know if you're known or
I just want to be co-host. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. If you want to make me a co-host, that'd be great.
Yep, you're set.
Okay, great. Thank you. One sec. Okay. Yeah, so hi, my name's Ben. I am an intern at the city of Concord. I'm working primarily on our housing element, and yeah, it's been a great tool to play around with so far. Sorry, one sec. I don't know if are you able to see? Sorry, I got a new computer and I have to allow.
That's right.
I have to allow Zoom to share my. Would you mind actually sharing your screen? Sorry,
yes,
I got a new computer like yesterday, and nothing's set up yet.
No problem. Let me pull that up. Okay, so this is, I think this is the correct one, right?
Yeah, that's it. Are you able to see the, I guess it doesn't matter about the back end. Yeah, so really what I've done so far is kind of mess around with the tool, see everything that it could do, everything sort of possible that it could do. And that's led me, we started with the idea of, dividing between multifamily and single family. And then when I was taking a look at the other examples that exist, like Lafayette, like Elk Grove, like the one in Australia, I kind of felt that I wanted to focus mainly on demystifying the idea of density. So what does that actually mean? And I think, I can't remember exactly which example had it, but I think one of the plans actually had, at the very bottom of their balancing act tool, they actually had, images of what different multifamily homes could look like at different densities, which I thought was really great, and definitely a best practice that I want to bring into our balancing act example. Yeah, right, exactly. This is Lafayette, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right. So I thought these were really cool. So actually, if you wouldn't mind going back to Lafayette for a sec.
Sure. I was just going to show
okay.
Eastvale did the same thing. I think down at the bottom, or maybe they actually put pictures in.
Awesome.
At the bottom. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So so I was kind of playing around with that for hours, and I was trying to decide between if we want to have buttons for adding just more density, just more homes, or do we want to do it by dwelling units per acre? And I kind of realized that for Lafayette's, where there was these, the pictures at the bottom, they show.
Hi, Karen, it's Stephen Turner from the city of Newark. Just wanted to reach out to you regarding.
Sorry.
Oh, hello. Hi, Karen, it's Stephen. Did I reach your?
Okay, I just muted Stephen. So.
Oh, sorry about that.
No, that's all right.
Yeah. So for what I thought was, even though there were images, even though we want to include images, the thing I've been trying to figure out is what's still the best way to sort of demystify the idea of like dwelling units per acre, because even though you have these really cool images of potential buildings that could go in, if you use the tool and you increase the dwelling units per acre, you very quickly get above, these even the maximum dwelling units per acre at the bottom, like the largest building. And so for our tool, if you wouldn't mind going back to our tool for a sec. So my sort of the most recent trial and error experiment that I've been playing with was the very first thing under multifamily, which is rezone. I decided to change the question to a scenario question. I was inspired by Elk Groves. I really liked the idea of you get to of sort of marrying the density with location. So you can choose to upzone a specific place or not, or you can upzone it. Maybe my next steps are sort of exploring, can this tool allow us to check those boxes in terms of different densities, and then we on the back end sort of set those densities, and then but then we do it by geographic location. And so because Concord has to, our arena numbers are about 5,000, and we have a lot of different sites, and we have a naval weapons station that has been developed that's going to come online hopefully in the next couple of years. We're going to have a lot of different. We can't do the real site specific things like using the map, where it's going to have to be much broader. So we think for our tool, this might be the way to go. But again, this is a very rough shape. We haven't come to really any conclusions. But yeah, that's kind of been my overall thoughts so far. I won't take up any more time, but yeah, that's kind of where we're at.
No, that's great. I'm glad that you're finding the tool is flexible. That's not a precise use case that we had anticipated, but it sounds like that you're finding the features that you need to work on that. So that's great.
Right.
Just a couple things to note. We've got two different ways of two different varieties of scenario questions. The one that Elk Grove did was to include or not include, or it's got it's basically a select one. But it looks like Ben has delved a little bit into this, and he's got the select multiple, which is nice, and it works just fine. And then, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think it looks good using this, and obviously you can put in, pictures and photos and things like that here. But yeah, Ben, I'm glad that it's coming together for you.
Yeah, actually, I had a question about that information thing, the little eye. Is there a way? I've added an image to I think the duplexes and triplexes one. It's under rezone to allow duplexes and triplexes.
Okay.
Yeah, on the right. But it's only after you click more details. And I was wondering if there was a way to add the image directly into that text box, or just to remove the extra click that people have to make.
There is not, and
Okay.
really that's more just a user interface type of thing. Like, this is just meant to be a quick little description of what it is, and then hopefully people will take a look.
Okay.
So sorry about that. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Ben. Any questions just about Ben's thought process and what they're doing? All right. Well, thank you so much, Ben, for kind of sharing your progress, and hopefully we'll get a couple or two or three of you next week that'll want to do the same. Andy, would you be willing to share a little bit about what your thinking is regarding Cupertino? Are you there, Andy? There.
Yes, I'm here.
Do you want to share your own
oh,
screen,
good.
Andy, or do you want me just to show it?
If you could show it, that would be great.
Okay. We're looking at Cupertino
This is very
now.
preliminary, and we were fortunate enough to have a very strong GIS team over there who they actually have an interface that's available online for anybody from the public to download a Geojson. So they've automated that whole process. So what we did is in looking at their general plan, acknowledging that both their special areas and neighborhoods, by having a cross section of those two, we could cover the entire city in a meaningful way. And from here, we haven't yet added all of the data and where we're going next. Our goal is to do it as a percentage. And so we're open to any advice you might have for this. Rather than talking numbers in the beginning, what we're really trying to do with this initial map, and then we'll have iterative maps following, is to do basically a visual preference survey, essentially, for distribution of where housing should go within the city. So instead of having that unit count, we would like to have that be 100%. And then for each corresponding area, whether it be a neighborhood or a special area, that everything could be raised then by a 5% increment. Now, we recognize that there's going to be some legacy language or text that we're not going to be able to get rid of, like housing units, where that's not necessarily going to translate well. So we're going to have some bugs to work out or some things to override maybe. Yeah, if you have any advice for our goals here, we'd love to hear it. But the Geojson, that was Rachel Kane, who's also on the line here, and she was able to, I mean, that was our heartburn about how we're going to make this happen. Now the rest we can play with and work out, but this appeared to be she did it really fast because these were very clean GeoJSONs.
Yeah.
Now in Fairfax, I tried to export a GeoJSON from an ArcGIS map, and I think from what I could read online, maybe the projection from the original map was not something that was compatible for a GeoJSON export. So I attempted through the Arc catalog to change. Anyway, we ended up with not having what we needed with Fairfax. So we've been very fortunate to have ABAG and your team help us out.
Good. Let's stick with Cupertino just for a moment. That's an interesting idea, and it actually is not too dissimilar, Andy, from what Elk Grove did. So Elk Grove had their opportunities divided by council district. So this is just a different way of dividing it by neighborhood. And I'd have to think this through, but I think we can probably accomplish what you're talking about. And Dan, just on the fly, if we wanted to have this somehow being represented as like a percentage of the arena of the allocation going into a neighborhood, does that seem like something that we could do?
Yeah, let's look at the details and talk about it. I think there'll have to be housing units behind it somewhere, but we may be able to present it as percentages. So yeah, we'll explore that.
Yeah, that'd be great. Idea. We would especially love it if those percentages could be in that column for, I'm thinking CSV, for the density, so that we can actually have the change in the color on the map.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Andy, you're challenging us to think through this a little bit differently. Yeah, let's maybe have a deeper conversation about that. I'm just curious. Is this type of approach something that others would be interested in? So this is yet a different use case. And if it is, I don't know, is there a way for you to like clap your hand or something, or even maybe just unmute yourself and tell us how this approach might be something that you all would be interested in, that others would be interested in?
See, one thumbs up.
Wendy's giving it the thumbs up.
Yeah, there's another one from Rachel.
Okay. Okay, so let's think through a little bit about how we might be able to make this happen. Any questions from Andy, or for Andy, excuse me? All right. So Andy, we just took a quick look at this yesterday. I think this actually looks really lovely. Just one thing to keep in mind is that you've got like a north and a north and a north over here, and you've got a south and a south. And so the way that you know, these labels are kind of large, and so the way that Dan has set this up is that the software takes the first word or the first whatever before a space, and then that's what it makes the label. And so what we really encourage you to do is similar to what Lafayette did, which is to use a number. So if you make it 1- and 2-, then it actually shows up really nicely up here. And it just looks better. And it also won't be so confusing because you won't have 3 norths. So Dan, Garrett, Amy, anything else that just by way of quick observations that we might want to advise Andy about in terms of what he's got going on?
No, you can turn off the chart, the where the money goes chart. There's a checkbox for that.
Yes.
And anybody creating new housing simulations starting today, we'll have that turned off automatically when you switch to housing, just so you know.
Yeah.
We
And
did
if you want to
notice-
keep it, you can change that where the money goes text in the settings tab.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
we haven't
this-
done much more than just
Yeah.
import, but we
Yeah.
we did notice though with Eastvale, there's a bar graph above where it now says density allocation, and then and it seems to be informative, so that it's colored in relationship to the items or the optional locations, and it tracks it as percentages. So yeah, we were playing around with settings in our Fairfax map to see if we could do a similar thing.
Yeah, it's the display chart for expenses. You would change it to bar chart. That's how you would do that, Andy.
We tried that with Fairfax. I'm not sure what else we might have been doing wrong, but it didn't display automatically. Is there something
Okay.
else? Yeah.
We'll take a look at it and see.
Great. Thank you. It seemed like a really great tool. I think when I first saw Eastvale, I didn't understand how awesome it was until we got digging into our own map and then realized we want it too. Yeah.
Good. Okay. Well, anything else, just by way of comments to Andy, questions of Andy? One thing I always encourage people to do, and people often forget, but if you go up here into account settings, you can put in a logo. So you will have the option up here, like for Cupertino, the Cupertino logo would show up here. I mean, that's obviously, something that you'd consider, last before you publish, but it just kind of it adds a nice finishing touch to it. All right, anything else? Okay, well, thank you, Ben and Andy, for being willing to share a work in progress and to share, thoughts, considerations, concerns, and everybody else for, sort of paying attention and helping to think through this. So, Carrie, I'm going to turn it over to you now so that you can talk to these folks about ArcGIS and how those geometries can be put into a balancing act.
Awesome, thanks. And hello, everyone. My name is Kerry Smith. I'm with ABAG MTC, and I lead the data and visualization unit at the organization. We're the developers of the HES tool and also BASIS, which contains a lot of local data that we collect from jurisdictions to help us in our planning practices at the organization at MTC ABAG. So I was asked today to come and provide you guys with a brief overview of how to export files out of ArcGIS as Geojson objects, and also give you another option if that's a challenge for you, where you can just upload the data to a folder that I'll share today, and we can convert those files for you and pass them on to Balancing Act or back to you as well. So that's an option that we're definitely going to support. And then going forward, we are adding features in a rolling basis to our application that allows these type of activities to happen. Those are stage features, and again, we'll make those things happen over time. But for now, we definitely recognize the pinch that many jurisdictions are in terms of getting this work done, and we want to be as supportive and helpful as we can. So I will go ahead and start by sharing my screen and talking about a few things that I heard you guys talk about in the previous conversations, and also share with you how to do this export. All right, so one question I think I had, or I guess maybe I won't ask questions now, but one thing I'll say is, you guys can all see my screen, right? Just want to make sure we're good to go. Okay, so one thing to pay attention to in GIS software, especially when you're exporting files out for Geojson for use in other object or other applications, is the projection of your data frame. And so most tools that are run on the web, like Balancing Act, use a projection, which is typically WGS84. It's a World Mercator sort of projection. That projection is 4326. And as long as your data frame and your Arc Pro or ArcGIS desktop session is in that coordinate system, the files that you export can be used in other platforms like Balancing Act. But that's something that we definitely want to make sure people are aware of. Your projection matters, and you want to make sure that you're in WGS 84. All right. So step one, Arcmap. So I'm in Arc Pro right now, and inside of Arc Pro, for those of you who are using Arc Pro, you have a geoprocessing toolkit. Your session or your views may look slightly different than mine. So if this does look confusing to anyone who's tried to do this before in the past, please speak up and ask questions. But you get to these features to Geojson from your geoprocessing toolbox. And in my platform, geoprocessing is a tab that I open up. And in that tab, you can actually just type what you're trying to do. And so in this case, I'm interested in JSON. So I just type in JSON to see what options come up. So I see there's two options at the top, JSON to features and features to JSON. So I want to do features to JSON. All right, so here's where you get the dialog option to choose the input features. And so in this case, I'm just going to choose this feature right here. And the second option you'll be asked is what format. And so I always choose output to GeoJSON, and I always choose project to WGS 84. So what that allows me to do is to make sure that that file that's output from this feature class is put into the right format. So you'll get a path to download that file where you want to place it, and you just run it. And so the export will take some time based upon the size of the file that you're running. I would expect that most of your file sizes are going to be much less than this one. These are all the parcels for San Jose. So it might take a couple of seconds. So I'm not going to wait for that process. I just chose a terrible data set for this example, and I just realized it. But this is going to run and export a file out. While that's happening, I'm going to switch over and take a look at a couple of other resources. All right, so I know that some of you may be using Arcmap. Arcmap has a similar feature that you can use. And I will take this link and stick it in the chat just so everybody has it. Okay, and then the other one that I'm going to share with you is the one for ArcGIS Pro, which is what I was just using just now. Okay, so this will, this should basically help anyone out who has some technical skill sets to be able to go through this tool and export those files out. So those are the two options, and they're essentially the same. There's not much difference between those two. I think that covers that part. So this is a very simple exercise. It's not something that's too challenging to do. And if there were folks who wanted to get another live demonstration, YouTube is a great resource to find out. You might not have Arcmap or ArcGIS. You may be using open source tools like QGIS. So again, there's resources that you can find on YouTube that will walk you right through how to do that if you were using something like QGIS. So the last thing I'll say is here is the file request link. And let me see if I can put that in the chat as well. Okay, so here, all we're asking is that you give us your email address, a description of the file, and then just place your file geodatabase or shapefile in this location. once we receive that file, you can actually, and we'll notify you once we have your email, we'll respond to you to tell you that your file is ready. You can download that file from a link, this link right here. And let me just copy that one as well. Okay, and I'll put that in the chat as well. Let's see. Download. Okay. And this process doesn't take too long. We actually like this process from our perspective because it allows us to actually add those sites that you may have identified locally into the HES tool so that we can have a complete list of all the housing sites that local jurisdictions are identifying. So it's helpful to have that information for us as well. So I think I will pause there and see if there are any other questions about this process. So I went through 3 things, the help on how to do it in Arcmap and ArcPro, some examples of QGIS, and being able to upload files to us with a turnaround time of probably a day at the most to get these files back to you. And probably within a 2-week time frame, that process will be something that's added to this tool that allows folks to upload their data and then see the sites in the application. Yeah, so I'll pause there to see if there are any questions.
Hey, Carrie, this is Dan Weary from Michael Baker International. I was just trying to check your link for the ABAG HES team file download, but I'm getting an error message there. It says the site can't provide a secure connection. Any advice on that?
A secure connection? I'm sorry, let me double check that. I just copied these links from my box folder, so.
All the other links seem to have opened fine. But...
So this was the upload or the download?
This was the ABAG HES team file download.
Yeah, this is the folder. So download, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, this is the folder that should go into. So
see if there's any.
Yeah, I mean, this should be fine. I'll copy this link and send it over again. I don't think the link changed, but try this link.
So far it looks the same, but yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe it got truncated or something. I don't know.
It looks the same.
That might be on my end. Okay.
Yeah, I think it works for me. This is Amy.
Okay. Good.
Might be on your
Okay,
end.
cool.
Yeah, Carrie, mine just says there are no items in this folder, but that just means nothing's been uploaded yet, right? Like
That's correct. Yeah, no
Okay,
one has files yet. So I'm just offering this as an option.
Gotcha.
Okay. Okay.
So I can switch back over to see how this process went. So it looks like it's completed now, and I can look at the details to see what it did. It took about 2 minutes, so it wasn't that long. And let's see here. I can actually go look at that file on my local directory. Starting to see where I am at.
Carrie, we did have someone who was able to export to Geojson, but then they just were missing the ability to open it in a text editor and copy the text out.
Oh, okay, I can show that.
How would you recommend people get the text onto their clipboard from this export?
So that's because they're trying to copy the values that are in there and paste it. Yeah, that might require using something else, depending on what text editor they're using, and depending on the size of the file. So that can be a little bit of a challenge if they're trying to copy and paste the values in here. But I can check this file to see how big it is. Sorry, I'm just being a little brain dead this morning. I haven't finished my full cup of coffee yet, but I'm getting there. All right, here we go. I'll just paste it. And there's the file right there. So this is a pretty large file. It's 235 megabytes. And I don't typically, I don't think anyone's going to have a file that's this large. This is San Jose's parcel. So I would expect most of us to have much smaller files. But in terms of opening this up, copying and pasting the text out, I may have to see if my, sorry for not being able to do this on the fly. This computer that I'm using with this file does not have many text editors on it. I'm a Mac user, not a Windows user. And so I don't use Windows for anything else other than GIS. And so I apologize for that, but I can take this file and bring it over to my, my box folder and then see about opening it up. So let me see if I can do that on the fly. Here we go. Box. Sometimes it takes a second for these files to sync up to the application. Let me just see if I can open up one on my local computer. It's loaded in the Geojson file right now, so I can preview it. I'm using Visual Studio Code as a text editor. It's also something that I use to do most of my coding in. But this file should be able to handle a Geojson file. But as you can see, even for Concord, this file can be pretty large. And actually, the Geojson file that I chose is something that we sent over to Concord. So this might be all of their parcels. So I think I did it again. Where's my coffee? Sorry.
But basically, you're going to get a screen full of text.
I don't think I want to
select
make you
all.
guys wait for this part of the process. I'm just choosing terrible files to demonstrate opening it up in a text editor. But I can see if I can find one that does that. All right, so going back over here.
Did we lose him?
Did Carrie just drop off?
Yeah, he must have had a computer problem.
Shoot.
I think he covered it pretty well though, so we can probably move on. See if he has
Okay.
anything to add later.
And Dan, just while we're on this topic, this would be a good time for you just to remind people, and it's not a one-to-one alternative, but the other way that we're working on that should be available by next week, just to describe that once again for folks.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot simpler. You won't have to worry about trying to pull individual shapes out of a big list like Carrie is generating there. So you'll basically click a button, add Hess site. It'll show you a list of the addresses or APNs for sites you flagged in Hess as your sites. And you just click one, it adds it to your map. It's that easy. If you click a second one, it adds it in right there next to it. And you can keep adding them, or you can go on to your next subcategory and add more. So that'll be really easy. Look for that early next week. And then we'll give you more of a demo of it on next Wednesday.
Yeah. good. And then also just to remind people that you can also just draw a shape.
Absolutely.
I mean, that would work in a lot of instances. So, okay. Well, sorry that Kerry dropped off. He might come back. We can also, he's on staff, so he might be coming back next week if we need him. But let's move on to an item that was actually asked about quite a bit at the last session, which is how do you do this in different languages? And so as part of our work with ABAG, we're at, oh, Kerry, you're back. Did you want to finish up? Sorry that you dropped off just at the wrong time.
Sorry about that, guys. My internet just dropped completely. I don't know what's going on with Comcast lately, but I pay a pretty penny for my internet service because I'm working from home, as you can imagine. When it drops, it just shuts down everything. So many apologies for that.
We've all been there, Kerry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So hopefully
Okay.
you guys got everything out of that. And I think one upshot from this is we're here to facilitate and help as much as possible. So don't feel shy about reaching out to us either through office hours or direct connect via email or Samaya. We're here to help as much as we can. The last thing I was definitely trying to show you guys was the ability to be able to edit one of those Geojson files in a text editor and copy and paste. I just didn't have any small ones to use, so apologies for that. Most of my files are quite large.
Yeah, I understand. And,
But you can.
And while you're off, Dan just gave a little bit of an overview of what they can also expect beginning next week with the API connection between Hess and Balancing Act, which actually might handle a good chunk of this complexity automatically, which is great.
Yeah, I think that would be the best. Honestly, that would be the easiest and best way to approach this. And if, again, local jurisdictions have already done some site identification work and they want to pass that information over to us via an upload, we can handle putting it into the Hess tool and thereby pushing it over to Balancing Act. So that's one fast and easy way for us to facilitate that work. And it helps us to collect as much of the data that we need as well. So I think that's a great option.
Great, good. All right. Yeah, we might be running a little bit behind, but as I said, we're going to have a sort of our own type of buffer zone or a buffer meeting next week to catch up on some things that we may need to work on. So Garrett, why don't you show folks how to add languages? So Balancing Act, the simulation generally, which includes the budget simulation, has about 8 or 10 languages. We're going to have 4, I think, that are going to be built out for housing with all of the various pieces, and that's going to be English, Spanish, simplified Chinese, Vietnamese, and Spanish. So so English plus 4 others. So Garrett, why don't you show us how we can do this?
Perfect. Awesome. So let me share my screen here. So what I want to do just really quickly is kind of show you what a Spanish translated sim looks like and the components that we're able to translate, and then the components that you're responsible for translating. So here, what we're able to translate from the Balancing Act side is we're able to translate headers. So your headers will change into the language, your desired language, and then all the buttons, like the help buttons, the continue buttons, those will all change as well. And then also the help buttons up here, and then the submit button. So that's what we can translate. What you'll be responsible for is translating all the context that you're adding. So for example, that includes your categories, that includes your subcategories, and any more info text that you want to add. So what I want to do is really just show you the best way to probably prep a CSV that you can then send over to a translator. And then I want to go ahead and actually build a sim in a different language pretty quickly. So here, you're going to go into your completed simulation. And this simulation was probably created in the language that you're most comfortable with. For example, mine is in English. And what I want to do is I want to export the data that I embedded in this one. So here I have my housing requirements, and then I have my housing choices. So my housing choices, they compile of the categories, the subcategories, housing units, et cetera, et cetera. So what I want to do is export this, and I'm going to move my little zoom camera over here. I'm going to export this all out, and I'm going to do so by using this bulk edit button. And then I'm going to export my housing choices. And what this does is launch a CSV of all the information and context I included in that sim. So as you can see, in this one, I had my categories. I have 3 different categories, and then I have 3 different subcategories and the amounts. In this demo, I didn't have anything in the more info or more details. If you do, that's fine. They will appear there as well. So since this is the CSV of all my context from my English simulation, I'm going to then just insert rows in between each of these English category subcategories. And the reason for that is what we've just seen from previous clients. This is the best way to then deliver this CSV to your translator for them to come and give that back to you and then implement it into a new sim. So what you'll be asking, if I'm asking for Spanish translation, I will want their Spanish translation to be plugged in there, simply just under the English language, there, and there. So once I do send that off to the translator, I'm going to then show you what it can look like. So I'm going to grab this. So when I get the translations back, this is what my new CSV should look like. It should have my English categories, which are there and there, and then the newly translated Spanish, so which are there. And again, it's just where those empty rows were. So I think this is just a really easy way for your translator to know what English text needs to be translated. So then what we want to do here is then import this CSV into a new simulation with Spanish as the primary language. So what I'm going to do is go into my simulation tab. I'm going to create a new simulation. And I'm going to give my simulation name. I'm just going to put this Spanish demo. And then here are the languages. I'm going to scroll down to Spanish. And then I just want to make sure that the simulation mode is set to housing, which should be already preset for most of you here. So then I'm going to click continue.
Sorry to interrupt, Garrett. If you don't see that housing drop down, it's just because you only have access to housing, and so it's automatically set to housing. So don't sweat it if you don't see it.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Yeah, thank you for that. So then here, what I'm going to do is then import that newly translated CSV into this new simulation. So the one that I just showed you, what I translated was housing choices. So I'm going to first go back to here, and this was a translation file. So if I only want to import the Spanish languages, I'm actually going to go ahead and then delete these rows, the English rows, because I'm only interested in adding the English categories, subcategories, amount, and any other context that came along with that. But before I import, you won't have to change the language of the front row, the top row, the category, subcategory, and amount, because we use those headers, those column headers, to then map directly into the simulation. So it's easy to then just match. So I've already done that. So I'm going to go in and actually just import a CSV. And I have that CSV ready. Click open. And there it is. So this is what I uploaded. I uploaded my 3 categories. These are all in Spanish. And then there are my subcategories. And then all the amounts still uploaded as well. And then if I had any more info or more details text, it would also import there as well. What I want to show you what that looks like actually is I'm going to export this again, just so you're familiar with what the CSV looks like. And the CSV that I imported there, again, only included the Spanish translations, but again, it's just really important to keep these column headers the same and in English. So that's just how it maps back into the system. So that is what I just uploaded into housing choices and housing requirements, because we need to, before we can preview it, again, as a reminder, you need data in both your housing requirements and housing choices. I'm going to go into my housing requirements. I have a CSV already ready. And it's already in Spanish there. So now that I have my Spanish translations, and again, these are all just coming from the first simulation that I had completed, I'm going to then click preview. And now, basically what I was showing earlier was that Balancing Act will translate headers and buttons into the desired language of your choice. Here you see English here, and that's just because we haven't customized the entry screen. And that's something that we talked about last week and have some help articles on about as well, how to customize those entry screens. So you would just need to also translate that into Spanish. Continue, continue. And now as you see, I have the headers and the text strings. They've translated to Spanish, translated to Spanish, translated to Spanish. The help button is in Spanish. The submit button is in Spanish. And now all the context that I added are also in Spanish. So there's the housing need, and then these are by 3 locations. And you might be seeing that housing units is still there. That's going to be changed later within the week. We're just going to apply that as well. So I can take a breather there and either have Chris or Dan chime in if I missed anything, or just take any questions.
Sounds good to me, Garrett.
And
Okay.
Garrett, are you going to cover the custom strings as well? The custom text from the settings tab, or is that at a future date?
I can, yeah. So let me go into that. So I'm going to share my screen again. And again, I'm looking at my Spanish translations. And here's my Spanish demo. So if I want to change the language of here, which is total units, I can go through and go into the settings tab. I'm going to scroll down, scroll down, scroll down. And then this is where I'm able to then add my own text customizations. So let's see, right here is my total units. I can go ahead and just edit that. I'm not going to pretend I'm fluent in Spanish, so we're just going to put the Spanish text here. So that's going to change that. And then I'm going to scroll up, preview, and there it is. But just as a reminder, anything that you're adding in any context in terms of category, subcategory, and more info, those are the things that you're responsible for kind of providing. But here, that was just one example of, you don't have to stick with these headers. You have the ability to change all that. And we actually do have a help article on that. So I can send that around in the follow-up email, but definitely don't hesitate to reach out, and I can have and we can even jump on a quick screen share and we can work on that together as well.
All right, this is it's a bit complicated, but we're as Garrett was saying, there are the fixed pieces of the simulation that will all be translated automatically for you when you select the language. But then there is this additional challenge of then having your specific content be translated, and there's some ways to do that in a sort of a strategic way and do it more quickly using the CSV, but a little bit of it, some of it just has to be done by hand. That's just the way that it is. So any questions or comments about this? Just unmute yourself if you want to talk.
I was just going to say, I think there's 4 languages that are going for the ABAG agreement.
Yeah.
I didn't know if anyone had specified what the languages were.
Yeah, no, it's simplified Chinese, Vietnamese, is it, and Spanish.
Yeah, English makes 4.
Yes.
4 including English.
Yeah. All right. Anything else? All right. So I think we're, rather than trying to rush talking about meeting mode and analytics and impacts, since because we are a little bit delayed in that final link between HES and API, why don't we just save those for next week? And so we'll come back. Some of you had asked about the meeting next week. We're adding an additional user group meeting just to kind of capture or to cover these last items, but also the new custom development that we've been working on. The link to HES should be done by then. So Amy in just a moment is going to send out an update to the link. It's the very same link, but she's just adding another day to it. So it shouldn't be too confusing. Please join us if you can. Anything else before we sign off? Let me just pull up my screen here and just so anyway, so between now and then, please continue to work on your simulations, reach out, let us know if you need some help. We'll be meeting November 17th at 9 o'clock Pacific time. We'll demo the HES balancing act link. We'll do some more workshopping. We'll cover impacts, meeting mode, and analytics. Anything else? All right, thank you all for working through this with us. We're excited to see all the cool simulations that you're building. Take care, bye.